What is up? It is week 16, and we are here to break down the slate for DFS on DraftKings. It is the week of the cheap quarterback, which we'll talk about, and it is the week to pay up for running backs. Of course, as always, we give you our top plays, our values, and our stacks. And of course, our favorite segment, the sick call of the week. It's going to be a two-man show tonight, so I hope you enjoy the show. So hang tight.
Going for two, kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two, sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah.
What is going on, and welcome to episode 413 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I am your host, of course, Geoff Lambert. You can find me on Twitter at GeoffLambert77. Of course, we're here live on the GoingFor2 Live Podcast Network every Friday night. We are down a man tonight. Gerson, unfortunately, could not make the show tonight. He is sick, so get well, Gerson. But me and Tim are going to hold it down tonight, man. What's up, Tim?
I'm doing good. As you see, I'm chilling in my living room here, all set up for Christmas. And I also got a 12-pack sitting next to me so I can fill in for Gerson tonight.
Love it. You can do your best Gerson impression by
Matter of fact, let's go ahead and crack one right now.
Yeah, go ahead and crack one open right now. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the show. Of course, today's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check out their best ball leagues, huge tournaments, private leagues, and pick'ems for all major sports. Use our promo code GF2 and get bonus bucks up to $1,000. Simple as that. Sign up, use promo code GF2, and get your $1,000 and start betting on some games. Let's go ahead and jump into the rewind.
The weekly rewind. Rewind.
All right, Tim. So last week, I'm not sure how you did. I had a pretty good week, but give me your rewind for the week. One good, one bad.
I did not. I had a terrible week. So I'll go real quick on mine. My only really good call last week was the Broncos D. I had them kind of across the board. But unfortunately, I had a lot of Derrick Henry last week. He was my lock of the week, and he really kind of shat the bed. But even worse than that, to fit Derrick Henry, I made the unfortunate mistake of playing Jalen Waddle, who got the goose egg. So that was terrible. I want to give a shout out to Gerson, though, because he was on the winning stack last week. He had the Rodgers, Adams, Britton Strange stack. So hopefully you guys played that last week and won some money. So Shout out to G.
That was definitely a good stack for sure. So my one good, I went with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, of course, 5 touchdowns. I think I also mentioned I was stacking him with Mark Andrews. He had a touchdown. He had one of those 5 touchdowns, had a pretty good week as well. So L-Jax was my one good. My one bad, I put a caveat here. So my one bad was Courtland Sutton. He did get the little snowflake next to his name. But that last junk time touchdown that he caught actually put me into the cash in my cash lineup. So it's sort of a bittersweet thing there. Like, he pushed me over the top, but he did kind of let me down overall. So Sutton was my one bad of the week. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the quarterbacks.
Let's talk quarterbacks.
So looking at our sheet, we have a very light sheet as far as quarterbacks go. I have 2 guys in my favorites. You only have 1 guy, Tim, so why don't you go first here?
Yeah, the guy you're going to talk about, I think, needs very little introduction. So I'm going to go with my favorite play at quarterback this week, and that's Joe Burrow. I've been playing this guy week after week. Joe Burrow stacks have paid off more often than not, and they get a great matchup against Cleveland, which we'll talk about this later, but they're rolling out, barely usable NFL quarterback. Their defense is half of what it used to be. And this just sets up as a huge, huge slate for Burrow, Chase, Higgins to just absolutely smash. And despite this being a pretty large slate, like we said, there's not a whole lot of spots we really love this week that I think could really break the slate. And this just feels like one of those classic Burrow, like 400-yard, 4 or 5 touchdown games. And so at 7,500, he's the first guy I'm going to.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't think I'm going there in cash, but he'll be my highest owned tournament quarterback for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, the stacking options are pretty straightforward. And Burrow has that tremendous upside there with, 400 plus yards, could put up 5 touchdowns easy against this defense. The other
And
guy,
there are 2 cheap options to run it back with that we'll talk about later too.
absolutely. The other guy I had, of course, is the favorite to win MVP right now at 8.7, Josh Allen versus New England. He's just putting up like video game numbers right now. I mean, he's got the rushing upside. He's getting rushing touchdowns. He has the passing. It's just all Josh Allen right now, and he could be a slate breaker with his ability. And 8.7, I think, is still too cheap. It's tournament only. Obviously, you wouldn't play him in cash because he's just way too expensive. But yeah, 8.7. I do like Josh Allen this week. Let's
I
move.
will say the best thing for Allen is all of his stacking options are fairly cheap.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. Yeah, I don't think there's any of them that are toward the high. Maybe Kincaid is sort of like the mid-range tight end, but other than that, I mean, most of his guys are like pretty cheap.
Yeah, I'm going to mention one guy that I don't have on the sheet real quick, just because I assumed Gerson was going to have him if he came on, and that was Kyler Murray. I just feel like week after week, we keep playing Kyler Murray, and we keep saying this is the week. But I did read a stat that he's actually very sensitive to pass rush, and the Panthers have by far the worst pass rush in the league. So there's also the narrative he's trying to get Trey McBride a touchdown. We'll obviously talk about a guy later I'm very high on who's going to be popular this week. So I think Kyler provides interesting leverage, and he's in that mid-range at 6K that I think most people are going to skip over.
Yeah,
So
agree.
this may be finally the Kyler week.
Yeah, and going back to that McBride thing, yeah, they did that little
Shovel pass.
little shovel pass. The
The
Chiefs
Kelsey, yeah.
still did not
Did
work.
not work out. There are certain things that only the Chiefs can do, right?
Right, exactly. All right, let's move down into the salary savers here, and I think this is kind of where you might live if you're in cash. The cheap quarterback, like I mentioned at the top of the show, is kind of what we're looking at. So give me one.
Let's just talk about the elephant in the room, right? It's Michael Penix, right? Or Penix. What I mean, I want to actually go to you here because normally I would go to Gerson for the kind of dynasty view on this. I know you're a dynasty guy. A lot of people are really hyped on this guy. So sell me on Michael Penix.
So, I mean, he's set up for success, right? He's kind of, we talked about Caleb Williams coming into the season having a great receiving core and hasn't really worked out so well. But I mean, he's coming in to a great situation. All his weapons are healthy. Drake London is there. Bijan Robinson is there. It's all set up for him. He got the perfect matchup against the Giants. He's going to be at home. It's going to be in the dome. His senior year in college or his last year in college, he put up some monster numbers there. So, I do think the Falcons were going to kind of protect him a little bit. I don't expect him to throw it like Kirk Cousins was throwing it like 40 times a game. But at 4.5, he doesn't have to, right? I mean, you get
Right.
12 to 15 points is all you're really looking for from Penix. And I think they'll have a conservative game plan, but I think they'll get enough points for him to pay off his value in cash games if you want to go that route.
So I tell you every week I run an optimal, and this week the optimal was Michael Penix, and I usually not a big fan of playing quarterbacks on their first start, but he seems like a clear play. The real indication for me was that when they announced him as a starter, the total almost did not change.
Right.
Like the over-under went up by 0.8, which is nothing. So obviously Vegas is confident that he's going to be that guy. So I think he's the cash play. The only other guy I'm considering would be Caleb Williams. We just talked about him. He's $1,000 more. He's got 2 very clear, in my mind, stacking options. Since Thomas Brown took over, that offense has looked a lot better. And we just saw Caleb do pretty well in this spot on Thanksgiving. So I think that's going to be one of my more popular stacks, since it is a very popular run back option we'll talk about later.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat that I want to get to. It is a season-long question, but we can answer it real quick for Ron T. He's like trying to start 2 backs. He's got Aaron Rodgers, CJ Stroud, and Brock Purdy. He needs to start 2, so obviously super flex. I'm going to go to you first here, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
Oh boy. Okay. Gosh, that's tough.
It is
I
because they
think
both,
I hate to say it. I think I'm benching C.J. Stroud. I think I'm going to go Rodgers and Purdy. It hurts me to say because I really like C.J. Stroud, but he has not looked good, and I think the Chiefs are a pretty good matchup for him. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think I'm going that route too. I think Rodgers is coming off of a good game. Purdy's coming off a terrible, terrible game, atrocious. Actually, lost me my home league with his 3 points, and I have Mr. Jared Goff sitting on my bench with 53 that would have won me. But yeah, I think I'm benching Stroud this week as
if
well.
it was in Houston, I think I bench Purdy, but it's in Kansas City, so I think I bench Stroud.
Agreed.
But I mean that one's a coin flip.
Yeah, definitely tough. Ray, I see your question in the chat too. We want to get moving here with the some of the plays, and then we'll get back to your question later in the show. So hang tight. All right. So yeah, we talked about Penix. You talked about Caleb. I'm going to mention Anthony Richardson at 5.4 versus Tennessee. It's the rushing ability, right? I mean, he could easily rush for 2 touchdowns at 5.4 and pay off his
Yeah.
salary. So, and Tennessee doesn't really present a huge problem for him defensively. So, if you don't want to pay all the way down to Penix, and you don't want to pay all the way up to like Burrow or Allen, I think Anthony Richardson is right there in the middle. You can play him as well.
Yeah, I think he's the other cash option if you're not going to play Penix.
Agreed. All right. Before we get to the tight end, let's go ahead and answer Ray's question here. It's a long one, so I'll try to put it up on screen. Start two in standard.
Oh.
Up versus the Jets, Garrett Wilson versus the Rams, or Jacoby Myers versus the Jaguars. He sat McConkey last night or Thursday night. So, yeah. So Cup versus the Jets, Garrett Wilson versus the Rams, or Jacoby Myers versus the Jaguars. We got to sit one of those guys.
I mean, Cub's coming off a 0, right? He's never going to get another 0 again. Garrett Wilson, he looks like the clear number 2 there. I think you have to play Jacoby Myers. To me, that's the lock. He's in such a good matchup. At that point, it's kind of a toss up, but I think I'd probably prefer Cup in that matchup. But you know what? Squeaky Wheel would say Garrett Wilson, right? I don't really know. That one's tough.
Yeah, that one is.
I will tell you, I'm taking Hunter Henry as the tight end, though.
Yeah, I think for the receivers there, I think I'm playing Cup because of
Yeah.
what you mentioned. I think not only did Cup get a 0, but Matthew Stafford knows he didn't catch a single pass in that game. He's going to make sure that he gets his boy fed in this next game. So Cup will be my lock. And then I haven't heard if Aiden O'Connell is the quarterback yet for the Raiders. Do we know that?
I think so, yeah. He's off the injury report.
That makes Cody Myers, a lot more interesting for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think then the key here is it's standard, so you're not getting those PPR points. So I think I'm going to lean Garrett Wilson there. I think Garrett Wilson, has the higher touchdown upside of the two. Myers is the more PPR, monster target kind of guy.
Sure, good call.
And then tight end, he's got Ertz versus the Eagles. I don't know if Ertz is going to play actually, so that might make your decision a little bit easier. Hunter Henry versus the Bills, or Dalton Kincaid versus the Patriots. And you said you're going Hunter Henry in that.
Yeah, I think he gets the most volume, even if he doesn't have the highest touchdown equity. Like he's not going to get you a 4, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going Hunter Henry as well. All right. We don't get too many season-long questions in there, so a little bit of a mix-ups, but that's all right. We like it. Let's go ahead and get to the tight ends now.
Did somebody say tight ends?
All right, so tight ends. This is another kind of pay up or pay all the way down kind of week for the tight end position. So why don't you kick us off here with one of your plays at the top?
Yeah, this guy I actually added to the sheet kind of late, and that's Jonnu Smith. He has been the number 2, if not the number 1 wide receiver in Miami for a while now, and Jalen Waddle being out only cements that for me. At 5,500, like you said, I think he's going to get overlooked. And he's probably my favorite play in that game. But there's a wide receiver we'll talk about that I think makes a really interesting kind of skinny stack with him that I'll be heavily invested on. But the tight end slate is not great. And I think that he's got similar upside to McBride, lower cost, lower ownership. So that's where I think I'm going to go.
Yeah, I like that. And I'll talk about McBride at 6.2 at Carolina. If you're paying up, that's the one you're paying up for. Obviously, they want to get him a touchdown. They showed that last week. They tried to give him that little shovel pass to get him a touchdown.
Yeah.
Still didn't get in. So they're going to try to get him a touchdown on top of the massive volume that he's already getting at 6.2. So if paying up for tight end is something you want to do, I think McBride's a pretty easy click. And I'm talking about George Kittle at 6K.
Mhm.
Another weapon is not going to be there for the 49ers. Isaac Guerrero is going to be out. So it's, they're getting very thin there with their weapons. And, as bad as Purdy played last week, Kittle was still his go-to target, had the best game of all the receivers in that game. So I think Kittle's going to be, once again, at 6K, one of Purdy's favorite targets. It's the easiest throw to make over the middle of the field. And Kittle is obviously good against after the catch as well. So he can always take one to the house. So I like Kittle at 6K as well. You have one more guy there in your favorites that's interesting as well, and what should be a high scoring game.
Yeah, I told you I like Lions and Bears this week. I think the Lions defense being really banged up is actually really good for the offensive environment. There are two ways to really attack the Bears: through your running back and through your tight end. We saw 2 touchdowns from Sam Laporta on Thanksgiving, and that was with David Montgomery. So I think they could go a little more pass-friendly here, and that would obviously really suit Sam Laporta. It's a good schematic matchup for him, and I don't think he'll be very high-owned at all. If it wasn't for the fact we have a really cheap play that's going to be popular, that's probably where I'd try to get to in cash. But I think the other guy's just too good of a value.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about the other guy too? Because I think he's gonna be pretty chalky. He had a monster game last week. Kind of funny, he was the chalk play last week, but I had to play him because I needed that extra $100, and he ended up balling out.
Yeah, like I said, props to Gerson last week. He was all over Brenton Strange. I went with Stone Smart, and I regretted it. But to me, it's too obvious this week. Not only so he led all tight ends in XFP last week with over 18, which is just crazy. So at 3,500 in a great matchup, these cheap tight ends have paid off all year long, right? Every time there's one of these 3,700 tight ends, they pay off. So I'm going right back to Brenton Strange. He was a little banged up early in the week, got a full practice in today. It's a lock and load for me in cash, and I'll be heavily exposed. And to me, he's one of the easiest clicks on the slate. There's not a lot of value, particularly if you're not going to play Penix. So I think he's kind of one of the go-to clicks for me.
Yeah, he's definitely my favorite in that range as well. I added my guy. He's borderline a sit call, but Ben Sinnott, the rookie tight end for Washington versus Philly at 2.8. He's almost that stone man. I mentioned, with that question with the sit start, that Zach Ertz, I don't believe is going to play. So it's going to be Ben Sinnott, and I think Cade is the other tight end, but Sinnott is the more athletic one, more of a pass catcher. So, if they're going to be going to the tight end, I think Sinnott is the guy there at 2.8. A tough click, because I don't know if you would really want to save that, extra money going up to Strange, but
Yeah.
you wanted to get really, tricky with it, you can do Sinnott.
Yeah, the only other guy I like in that range, if David Njoku doesn't play, is Jordan Akins again. Cincinnati has become the flow chart tight end team, giving up the most tight end 1 games across the entire league. And I mentioned earlier the cheap run back in the Burrow stacks. I don't really love Gesicki this week. So if I was going to run a Burrow stack with Chase and Higgins, my cheap and low-owned run back is going to be Jordan Akins.
Yeah, good call. At 3,200, that's a good call. I actually overlooked it completely. So I saw him on your sheet like, oh, yeah. Got that guy. Good stuff. All right, let's get to the running backs.
It's time for running backs. Running backs.
So it's good that we're moving right along here. Got through quarterback and tight end pretty quick because running back and receivers might be a little while because we got quite a few of them on here.
This is where you're paying up.
Yep, exactly. So why don't you, we'll go ahead and do the double drop here.
Lock it in.
So Gerson always says lock of the week should be your favorite play on the slate. And this week it's super easy. My number 1 running back overall, Jahmyr Gibbs, right? This is a gift from the fantasy gods. Shout out David Montgomery. I hope you're okay. Maybe not. I don't know since you're a Lion, but he's not going to play this week. Came out after prices were released. So at 7,500, this is the no-brainer click of the year. Like I said, he is my number one rated running back, and he's at 7,500. I think he's 800 cheaper than Saquon Barkley. So this is the no-brainer. He's going to be 40% plus in tournaments, probably 60, 70% owned in cash at least. But there are very few ways that he fails. In the past, when he's had the opportunity, when David Montgomery's been out, he's had Christian McCaffrey-like usage.
Yep.
Right? 18 plus touches, 5 to 7 targets. I mean, this is a player you would pay 8,500, easy. So just take the $1,000 and probably spend it on quarterback. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of David Montgomery, did you see that bad beat with his over under on total?
Yes, it was exactly 0.5
Yeah,
short of hitting. Yeah.
That's it. That's just a bad beat right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are already cashing that ticket this year.
All right, I'm going to go with Chase Brown, 7.7 versus Cleveland. I mean, this guy has been unreal. Last 6 weeks, he's been an RB1 every single week. He's doing everything. He's getting the targets. He's getting all the carries. He's getting touchdowns. I mean, he's just been it's crazy to think that at the beginning of the season, Zach Moss was the guy getting a lot, and they had this guy. I don't know how they were doing it because he's looked amazing at 7.7. I think he's still too cheap. Great matchup with the Browns as well. We've already talked about, Burrow could throw 5 touchdowns. 2 of them can go to Chase Brown because he's catching that many passes in this offense as well. So I like him a lot this week. Let's go back to you. What else you got from your top plays here?
Yeah, I think my second favorite running back this week, and he was the guy I was debating on being my lock of the week, is James Conner. 2 reasons. One, obviously he smashed last week, but this Kyler Murray has one of the reasons I'm kind of cautious on him. He's almost completely stopped running. They have just gone anytime they're in the red zone. It is James Conner time. He's got one of the best red zone roles in the entire NFL. And who is he playing against? Oh, that's right, the Carolina Panthers, who give the most rushing touchdowns to running backs. It's the flow chart, play of the week against the guy getting the massive amount of volume. To me, it's just the other instant click. I think I'm starting my cash lineup with Gibbs, with Connor, and then you're figuring the rest out.
Yep.
I think DeMercado, I think they said, was already ruled out too, so he's not coming out on third downs, which was really the only downside of his game. We're talking about, right, Brown, Gibbs, and Connor have probably the 3 best roles outside of maybe Saquon Barkley on this entire slate. And I think that's where you're spending your money, right? You're paying one of those 3 guys, or probably the guy you're going to talk about here in a second.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about Achane, who's been, he's been a target monster ever since Tua came back. He's similar to that in that vein of Gibbs, where he just gets, tremendous usage in the passing game. He's explosive. He's playing against my 49ers. They're in Miami, and the 49ers this year have not been the defense of old. They just have not. They can't stop the run. They're susceptible to running backs that catch passes. Kyren Williams killed us, twice this year. And I think, talent wise, Achane is 10 times what Kyren Williams is. So at 7.4, if you're not paying for one of the 3 guys we just talked about, Achane is a guy you can click on as well to get some leverage on the field if you're not our own guys. We each have 1 guy left. So why don't you talk about the last guy you got there in the favorites?
Yeah, the other guy I like is James Cook. And it's just because I feel like this is the James Cook week. It's a home, right? Favored by 14 against a Patriots team, which is, I think, 25th against running backs. The only problem I have with him is that he is giving up to Ray Davis and to Tyler Johnson. So it's not one of those lock rolls like some of the other 7K guys we just talked about. But he's got great touchdown equity. And we saw last week he went off against Detroit, which is usually a fairly good run defense. So, the only way I don't see Josh Allen smashing this week is if it's a James Cook week. And my favorite thing is I think he'll go overlooked, right? Connor's $100 more. The guy you're going to talk about is $100 less. There's a lot of popular options in that 7,500 range. So I think James Cook goes overlooked this week. And he's probably and he's got that late game matchup too, right? That late hammer we always talk about. I'm going to be overexposed on James Cook for sure.
Yeah, I like it. So my last favorite play here is really narrative street, right? If you look at the stats, I think Tennessee is ninth DVOA versus the run, so not a place you want to run against. But Jonathan Taylor has been catching so much flack for that dropped touchdown that he had last week. He's going to be super motivated. I'm sure he's had answered questions about it all week. It's 6.9. If you're playing that narrative, I do like Jonathan Taylor. You know, they're going to be running those read options with Richardson. So
Mm-hmm.
going to get some open holes there. So I like JT to have a nice bounce back after what was a debacle last week with that drop touchdown.
It's the only thing that scares me off the Richardson play, right? That he goes for like 150 and 2 touchdowns,
Yep.
and Anthony Richardson has like 150 yards and 1 touchdown.
Yep.
And gives you like an 11 or a 12.
Absolutely.
Like at that point, you're just absolutely dead in the water. So yeah.
Let's move down into the salary savers, and I'll kick us off here.
I want you to, because I want the scouting report on Patrick Taylor.
Okay.
When it comes to 49ers, I ask you, because my first impulse was when this guy was a Packer, he was not any good.
Mm-mm.
Is he any better on on the 49ers?
I'm not playing him if that means anything at 5.2. He's come in a little bit. I think when we first had Garendo come in, they were kind of splitting between him and Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference in the two of them was palpable, right? You can definitely tell. Garendo was in there, was explosive, it was hitting the hole. Taylor looked kind of tentative. He was, not the greatest, but at 5.2 at Miami in the 49ers offense, he's going to get volume. The other two guys that we have, I think one of them was signed like 3 weeks ago. One of them's off the practice squad. So he's going to get the volume. So is there a scenario where at 5.2 he gets 2 short touchdowns? Absolutely. So I think he's still in play because of that.
That's what it would take, though, because I think he's a career like 3 yards per carry kind of guy.
Exactly
so
right.
If he gets 15 for 50, right, and he doesn't get much pass game work, you're looking at an 8 or a 9 or a 10. And at 5,200, like he's not a 4K running back, right? I think it's a very different discussion if he's 4K, 4,200, something like that. At 5,200, like
it's tough.
That it's really scary, yeah, because I'm looking for at least 15, and I don't see how he gets there without a touchdown. Now, I'm sure Gerson was on the show. He's gonna be like, Tim, it's a 49ers running back. It's Kyle Shanahan. Just figure out a way to play him. But boy, that feels scary.
At some point, like this is a 5th string running back, right? Like when we started the season, he was 5th on the depth chart. At some point, it's got to, the wheels have got to fall off a little bit. I don't see. Like I said, I have him on my sheet because I do think he'll be a popular play because of that scenario. That just plug in the next 49ers running back. But I'm a little bit nervous to name his name, so I will definitely be under the field in that. And I'll go ahead and talk about Swift as well at 5.6. I like Swift a lot to have a bounce back. He's kind of struggled over the last couple of weeks, but against Detroit, we talked about all their injuries they've got all over the place. I mean, guys on IR left and right. And I think Chicago is going to want to try to run the ball, keep that offense off the field. So at 5.6, I don't mind DeAndre Swift as an alternative. Again, I think this is the week to pay up for running back, but if you are going to try to get different, he's one of the guys that I'll probably click on just because of that in-game environment, and Detroit's massive injuries on their defense is going to really hurt them.
Yeah, I think early in the week I was interested in Tajay Spears, but it looks like Pollard may try and play. That dude just plays through every injury and finds a way. If whatever reason Pollard is out, I think Spears becomes that guy, right? You play Gibbs, you play Connor, you play Chase Brown, and then you play, one of those 2 of those 3 guys, and then you play Spears because there is not a lot of value on this slate, particularly if you don't want to play Penix. The only guy I kind of put like out of obligation of having a value running back is Jerome Ford. And like, I don't even love this play, particularly if Donta Foreman plays, which I think he will, right? I think they're going to activate him for this game. So that whole Browns offense just scares me.
Yeah.
Like it's entirely possible they put up 12 points or something like that, 4 field goals, and absolutely everybody on that team is unusable, but he's the only one that looks like he could get some increased volume at that price. I'd much rather play Spears.
What do you think of a scenario where they bench DTR and put Jameis Winston back in? You think that is a potential to happen?
It would have to be a nightmare scenario. Yeah, I think they really want to see what they have in DTR before they just completely clean house at quarterback.
Yeah, agreed. All right, that's it for the running backs. Let's move to the wide receivers.
And now, Wide receivers.
I'll let you click it off here and then start off here, and then I will do my lock of the week. But go ahead and talk about one of your favorite plays here.
Yeah, more importantly, I want to talk about who neither of us put, which is Justin Jefferson. And I think that's very significant. He went off 2 weeks ago, but neither one of us have him. And I think that's really significant where we're at this point in the season. And more importantly, where we're at on the slate, right? Because I think the only guy I'm considering paying up for is probably Jamar Chase. And that's just because, like I said, it has been Cincinnati is the highest pass rate team in the league. They had the highest pass rate over expectation, the highest pass rate in the red zone. He's got the best role in football at this point as a wide receiver, if you factor in matchup, right? So for me, 8,500 is really tough to stomach. And I think that's my biggest problem is that if you get up to Chase this week, you're making uncomfortable decisions somewhere, right? You're playing a 4K wide receiver, you're paying a 3K tight end, and you're probably punting defense. So would I love to play Jamar Chase? Yes. Right. What do I scare? Am I scared he's going to put up a 40 if I don't have him in cash? Yes. But he's the guy I'm getting to in tournaments, and he's going to be heavily owned, and I think for good reason.
Yeah, agreed. I think his upside is absolutely tremendous. I think he's on pace to get the Triple Crown. So he's just been unreal so far this year, and I don't see that stopping in this game here. So
yeah, I read that basically he's the only non-quarterback to have like 3 40-plus point games.
Wow.
Right?
He's been a beast, sure. All right, let me get to my lock of the week.
Lock it in.
All right, so this one feels really good because I was really high on this guy for Dynasty coming into the season. I love Brian Thomas Jr. Everybody was talking about Xavier Worthy and his record-breaking 40 time, and I'm like, this guy is 6'2", 6'3", much heavier than Xavier Worthy, and ran just a little bit slower than he did. So just a tremendous athlete, but Brian Thomas Jr. is showing that he is a true alpha.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little scared to play him last week. He was a chalk play, so I did put him in because of the quarterback situation, and he still balled out, right? That's kind of what alpha receivers, when it doesn't matter what quarterback you have in there, they're still going to ball out. And if you look at his last 3 weeks, he had 10 targets, then 12 targets, then 14 targets. If we continue that pace, he's going to have 16 targets in this game. He is really all they have in that passing game, and the ball's going to him, and the ball still goes to him. At 6.3, he is way, way too cheap. I mean, he's 2,200 less than Chase.
Yeah.
Barely over 6,000 against the Vegas Raiders. I like BTJ a lot this week, so he's one of my favorite plays. So he is my lock of the week.
I read some crazy stat last week that, first of all, he balled out against the Jets, which is not easy to do, right? He had Sauce Gardner in a spin cycle. But the crazy thing to me is that whenever they went man, whenever Mac Jones realized they were in man defense, he had like a 50% first read target share. Just absolutely insane stats for somebody at 6,300. I completely agree. I didn't mention this under quarterbacks, but I actually like Mac Jones this week because he is throwing almost every pass to Brendan Strange and Brian Thomas Jr. Like it's the easiest, cheapest stack. And they play the Raiders, right? Like the matchup's incredible. So yeah, he's probably my first click at wide receiver. I'm going to go with the guy who I had a very interesting stat on. If I were to ask you what wide receiver leads the league in expected fantasy points, do you know who it is?
I would be thinking like Jamar Chase, but because I have access to the sheet, I think maybe you're talking about Puka Nacua.
No, it's actually Malik Neighbors.
Wow.
Can you believe it? It's Malik Neighbors. And so, yes, obviously he has one of the worst, if not the worst, quarterback situation. I mean, we got DTR playing this week, so how much better is Drew Lock, really? But yes, the number one wide receiver role in the league right now belongs to Malik Neighbors. And so obviously he had a 24-point game last week with the likes of Tim Boyle against Baltimore. This week he gets the Atlanta Falcons, and he gets his boy Drew Lock back. And if there's one thing we saw about Lock is that he will lock in on Malik Neighbors. He's kind of like BTJ, right? You're talking a $7,500 target share at 6,100. So yeah, him and Brian Thomas Jr. are my favorite clicks in that mid-range. I'm going to have a lot of Malik Neighbors this week.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm going to talk about Mr. Jackson Smith-Njigba at 6K versus Minnesota. I heard a stat that Cooper Kupp in the last 10 years had the most receptions out of the slot for a receiver. When he had his 2021 season, he had, I think, 69 catches out of the slot. JSN, as of right now, with 3 games to go, has 70 catches out of the slot. So he is absolutely catching it. And then with the Minnesota's defensive style, they bring the blitz a lot. He's going to be the hot route read pretty much every time that they drop back to pass. So I like JSN a lot this week. I was waiting to hear from Geno Smith. Sounds like he's gotten full practice.
He's going to play.
He's good to go. Kenneth Walker.
I don't know what's going on in Seattle, but Geno was not supposed to play. Kenneth Walker, maybe Zach Charbonnet. On Monday and Tuesday, people were talking about some guy named McIntosh. And now here we are on Friday night, and Geno and Kenny Walker and Zach, they're all going to play.
Yep.
So, yeah, to me, I love the JSN call. Minnesota, the worst team against wide receivers, 32nd in the league. They're especially bad against the slot. And he's their number one now.
Yep.
Like Tyler Lockett, who? Right? DK what? Yeah, I'm in shock. I knew he was good. He was obviously very highly touted coming out of Ohio State, but dude, he is the clear alpha in that offense. And the thing that I read, which I was actually considering him as, we're going to talk about him on my sheet as well. Minnesota, we are a very high blitzing team, right? That's what they're known for.
Yep.
So he is the best player on the Seahawks against the blitz, right? That's what Geno does. He just checks it down to the slot. I think it's going to be a 10, 12, maybe 14 target game for JSN at 6,000. So what I was going to say is if you're playing Michael Penix, I think you can fit Brian Thomas, JSN, and Malik Neighbors and still play 2 of the top end running backs. Yep. That's the only thing that makes me tempted to play Michael Penix, man.
Yep.
Because the alternative is that we play one of these 5K guys we're going to talk about here in a minute, and I don't feel quite as good there.
Yeah, agreed.
I do want to talk about Puka, though, because I think he also has one of the best roles in the NFL right now. Last week, you saw against your 49ers, he was the only player on that field that was usable for fantasy. And that was like a floor game for him with 17, 18 points. So, I mean, he's at 8K now. He's priced right. But, if you can get up to him, I think he's a great play this week. Grades out really well.
He has the highest matchup grade on FTN, which we know.
I was going to ask who had the FTN matchup.
Yep,
it's
he
Puka?
has it's Puka.
Boy,
now,
how far have the Jets fallen
Yep.
that they are now a number 1 matchup?
Yep.
Good Lord.
Yep. I'll talk about one more guy on my sheet here, and then we'll move into the salary savers. And that's Jennings, my guy for the 49ers at 5.9 at Miami. We've already talked about, Kittle a little bit and how they have no weapons anymore. Debo is having his worst season as a pro ever. And Jawan Jennings has been a monster. I mean, I think he's getting a 20% target share in that offense. And
are they tanking Debo on purpose?
I don't know what they're doing, honestly, because I mean, they're not even using him in the same way that they used him in the past.
Right.
I don't know if it's
they have Garendo at running back, and they're still not using him out of the backfield.
Yeah,
it's at all.
I don't know what's going on with it. It's a weird usage. I don't know. Maybe he's just not.
You're telling me they're on the 4-string running back, and Debo's 5,200 or whatever, and you're telling me he's not an instant lock literally any other season?
Yep, exactly.
I am in shock.
Yep, it is a weird situation. I think maybe he just lost a step. I've heard rumors that he's out of it. He just doesn't, not looking good. You did have one more play there. I just mentioned him, Devontae Adams. 0.1 is a decent play there in the middle. But let's move down into the salary savers here, Tim, and give me one of your guys.
Yeah, I mentioned the Caleb stacks. I'm gonna be very high on him because the stacks are so cheap. If you gunned in my head, make me pick a guy, I'm probably going to go with Keenan Allen just because he's a little bit cheaper. But I do think DJ Moore at 5,700 is also a really good play. But yeah, these are the guys that I think if you're not going to play, 3 of the 6K guys, you're playing 2 of those guys plus either Keenan or DJ Moore in your cash games. I think that's kind of optimal route this week. Again, we saw the volume on Thanksgiving, but more than that, like I mentioned, since Thomas Brown took over, he's kind of running that McVay system. These guys are out there on every snap, right? They're running 90%, 95% of the routes. And Keenan has been the volume master really over the last few weeks. I think he's had 35, 37 targets in the last 3 weeks. So Detroit, very depleted on defense. We've talked about that. They're especially weak to the slot. We've talked about that before. Just all the puzzle pieces fit together for Keenan Allen. And you need one of these 5K guys this week if you are going to play 3 of those top end running backs.
Yeah, agreed. Another one of those 5K guys that's been getting targeted heavy lately is Mr. Adam Thielen. I think he's got almost 30 targets over the last 3 weeks, close to 10 targets a game. He's just been a PPR machine, and I think that coincides with Bryce Young playing better as well. Versus Arizona, I don't think it's a matchup that you're scared of. So I think he's just continuing to do what he always does. And at 5.6, he's a pretty inexpensive player that you can get into your lineups.
Yeah, so I actually was going to mention this. They are a slot funnel, so this really favors Adam Thielen. I think Jalen Coker is going to be this week's Kayshon Boutte, but he's 4,200. Like, there's a realistic chance that Jalen Coker gives you like 7 or 8 points this week, and people are kind of point chasing. I think it's bad chalk, personally.
Yeah,
you're gonna if you're optimizer. Right, if you're using an optimizer, they currently have him for like 12 and a half points, which means he's going to be in every lineup you make unless you limit it. I would be very, very limited on Jalen Coker. That play scares the shit out of me, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, I would rather pay up to Adam Thielen or just kind of ignore the Panthers. We didn't even talk about Chuba.
right.
More chalk that busted last week. And this week he gets Arizona. I don't love the spot. I know he's going to be popular. That's why we didn't talk about him. But Thielen is literally the only Panther I want any piece of this week.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Chuba's burned me enough times now that I just can't go back to him again this week. So, good call.
No, especially when you have 5 better running backs within $1,000. Like, not this week, man. He's not 5,500 6K anymore.
Right. Yep. Exactly. All right. Let's get to the defenses.
Defense, 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 defense.
All right, I'll just let you talk about all 3 of them there, since the only one I have you already have on your sheet. So
yeah, can we have any value show up this week so I can pay up to the Bengals against DTR? Because the Bengals showed twice this year when they played a really bad quarterback, they ball out 15 plus points. They had 15 points, I think, in the matchup against DTR last year. 3,300 for the Bengals just feels like a stone cold lock for me, but I can't get there optimally right now, right? Like, I'm playing Michael Penix to try and pay up for the Bengals defense, and that just feels bad. So I don't know if you can get there, but they're my number 1 defense. My number 2 defense, point per dollar, is the Indianapolis Colts. Looks like they'll be playing against Mason Rudolph at 3K. But most likely my cash game defense, and this kills me to say, is the Giants at 2,400 against Michael Penix. At the end of the day, he is a quarterback making his first start. He may ball out, but the stats say he's probably not going to. But for me, this is going to be massive leverage because he's going to be incredibly popular, particularly in cash games. So if you do play Anthony Richardson or you do play Caleb Williams and you want to run the Giants defense against the Penix chalk, I think that gives you incredible leverage. Not to mention they project fairly well, even if Penix does do well. So I think it's a pay down at defense week, unless some crazy value opens up between now and Sunday. But boy, I would love to pay up if I can.
let me ask you this in cash: can you play Penix and the Giants defense? Can they both hit?
Yes. I think you can, just because value is so hard to come by this week. If you have, like we said, 3 high-end running backs and a couple of those 6K wide receivers, and the only way you can get there is playing both, I think Penix can get there. Say Penix gives you a 22 and the Giants only gives you a 4. I think you're okay with that. The net of those 2 players has to be 20-plus points. Agreed. Right? That's how it works. Otherwise, you're just losing too many points on the optimal. So, yeah, I think maybe you have to, right? But I'm really going to try and use that, savings to – because, I'll be honest, I don't really love any of the mid-range defenses this week.
Nope.
Right? Like some people are going to play the Raiders, but without Max Crosby, I'm not really interested. One of the other ones I saw was the Jets against Matthew Stafford and Puka, which I don't feel great about. Like
We just talked about.
there's, Jaguars against AOC. Like none of those mid-range defenses that I saw at Chalky are interested. So I'm either paying all the way down for the Giants or paying up for the Colts and Bengals.
Yep, and that's I had the Giants listed there because that exact reason. I just kept scrolling, like I don't see any great matchups that
No.
I threw the Giants on there because they are so cheap and they are playing a rookie quarterback making his first start, so potential is there for some turnovers.
Yeah, I think the Bears at 2,200 won't give you a 0, but I would rather find the 200 for the Giants.
Agreed. All right, it's time for our stacks.
GoingFor2.com's weekly stack report.
All right, you've talked about this stack pretty much the whole show, so go ahead and give it to us.
It was, no surprises here, man. Lock of the week, Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm going to do the Caleb stack, man. We're doing the Thanksgiving run back, Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's kind of my starting shell for cash if you're not playing Michael Penix.
Yeah, I like it. My stack, we didn't talk about Kyler too much. You mentioned him that you thought Gerson might be deep, but Kyler and McBride, it's like get McBride a touchdown week. So I think that's going to be, and I'm going to bring it back with Thielen, fairly inexpensive, and I can still fit in some of those higher priced running backs with that stack because Kyler is at $6K range. McBride you're paying up for, but then you get the cheap discount of Thielen. So I like that stack a lot this week. So that'll be my favorite stack in tournaments.
Yep.
All right, it is time for the sick call.
And now, the sick call of the week.
All right, we've had a bit of a cold streak. Nobody's hit a sick call in the last 2 weeks.
No, it's been rough.
Got the two of us to do it this time. So
I do want to give a shout out real quick. Mickey, who's always in the chat. I don't know if you're listening out there, Mickey. He had Justice Hill last week. Which was an excellent sick call. Worked out very well. Unfortunately, better than Derrick Henry. So shout out to Mickey. This one is one that I am very, very high on this week, and that's Demario Douglas for the Patriots. The Bills have become basically one of the biggest slot funnels in the entire league. We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown absolutely crush them out of the slot last week. This week, we mentioned there's not a lot of value, but the interesting thing to me was that Jalen Coker, who we mentioned earlier at 4,200, is going to be the chalk. He's only $200 more than Jalen Coker, and I have a much better projection on him, and he would come at basically no ownership. I think when I looked at it earlier, he was at like 2%. Wow. So you want to talk about a player. There's always one player each week in that 4,500 range that goes off for that 20 points that you need in tournaments to fit everything else. And I feel like this week, if you're playing Jalen Coker, he's going to let you down. You want to play Demario Douglas instead, aka Pop Douglas. I remember I mentioned earlier in the show, this felt like the Kayshon Boutte play. I actually considered playing him here, but the matchup for Douglas is just too good.
Yeah, agreed. All right, my sick call is a rookie who's going to get some opportunities thanks to some injuries. He had a pretty decent week last week because the aforementioned Jalen Waddle, as you mentioned, gave you a big fat 0. He went down, giving Malik Washington a chance last week. He had 6 targets, caught 5 of them, 52 yards. He is a true slot receiver. I think he's like 5'8". He's a small guy. Mm-hmm. But I know one of my writers wrote him up this past offseason in Dynasty, really likes him a lot.
He's fast. I know that much.
Super fast. Yeah, he's very explosive at 3.7. We talked about it many times in the past that the 49ers struggle versus the slot. And Malik Washington, filling in for Jalen Waddle there could really put some decent points up at 3.7. So I like him as my sick call this week.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I almost put Mac Jones as my sick call, by the way, which would have just been crazy. But I couldn't believe it, dude. When I was looking at my stats, Mac Jones rated out really quick. Hey, one shout out I want to give real quick before we get to that. We didn't talk about the Saturday slate, but if there's one lock of the week for me on the Saturday slate, it's DeAndre Hopkins. He's playing in Kansas City against his old team, the Houston Texans. I know people say it's kind of revenge narrative-y, but they're going to feed him. Houston is bad against wide receivers. So if you're playing that Saturday slate or you're playing one of these combo slates, absolutely lock in DeAndre Hopkins and move on from there.
Yeah.
So, there's my shout out for y'all.
Good stuff. And I do want to just give a quick programming note. So we have a show next week, but then we will not have a Week 18 show, but we will come back for the Wild Card Weekend and have a show. So
that's one of my favorite shows of the year too, Wild Card Weekend.
Agreed. So yeah, they'll check us out next week, and then I think the week of New Year's we won't be here, but then we'll come back for Wild Card Weekend. All right, G, if you're out there listening,
yes, please. My boy G out there, get well soon, brother. We miss you.
Absolutely. All right, Tim, give us your Twitter handle and where we can find you at.
Yeah, first of all, this will be our Christmas show. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you for chilling with us all year long. I love doing this show each and every Friday for y'all. I love the questions we get in the chat. I love the DMs I get on Facebook and on Twitter. So shout out to everybody listening. You can find me on Twitter at Keto DFS. And then, of course, the DFS Roundtable group on Facebook.
Good stuff. As always, guys, you can follow me at Geoff Lambert 77. And yes, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Have a safe Christmas and good luck this weekend. If you're playing the Saturday slate, good luck tomorrow. If not, good luck on Sunday. We hope if you win that millie, I want to see it in the chat next week. So for Tim, for Gerson, who's not here, I'm Geoff, and we will see y'all next week.
I got through 6 beers for you, G. Go Pack, go!